The rain came in thin, diagonal sheets across the glass face of Harrington Global Tower. Not the kind of rain that soaked through clothes in seconds, but the kind that crept under your collar and stayed there, cold and patient, the way certain people did. It was a Friday. The 43rd floor. Lily Harrington stood at the edge of the terrace with her back against the railing and nowhere left to go. She had not planned to be out here. She had been walking to the elevator, file folders pressed against her chest, when Adrian Cross had appeared in the corridor with two of his associates flanking him like walls. She had turned. She had walked the other direction. He had followed. And somehow, the way things always happened with Adrian, sideways and without permission, she had ended up outside, in the November air, with the city of Seattle spread below her like something cold and indifferent. "You look ridiculous," Adrian said. He had not raised his voice. He never needed to. Standing there like that. Like you matter. He was 34. He wore his suits the way billboards wore slogans, loud, calculated, impossible to ignore. His hair was the kind of dark that photographed well at charity galas. He had a smile that reached his eyes and meant nothing at all. Lily said nothing. "You know what's funny?" He took a step toward her. The two men behind him stayed at the terrace door, blocking it. "Your father asked me this morning whether you'd submitted the Q4 architecture report. I told him yes. I told him it was excellent. He was very pleased." Adrian tilted his head. "Do you know why I said that?" "Because you submitted it yourself," Lily said. Her voice was flat. "Under your name. Under the correct name." He smiled. "The name that actually means something in that building. The name the board recognizes. The name that's been using my work for 18 months. The smile did not waver. "Lily." He said her name like it was a small, manageable problem. "You're not equipped for this. You never were. Your father knows it. The board knows it. The only reason you still have a key card is because firing you would create paperwork." He took another step. "Go home. Write your little code. Let the adults handle the company." Later, she would not be certain whether she slipped because the railing was wet or because her legs simply stopped working the way legs are supposed to when the world becomes too much at once. It happened in the space between one breath and the next. Her right foot lost its purchase on the wet stone. The folder spilled. Her back hit the railing. The railing was lower than it should have been, some design choice made by someone who had never imagined a person falling against it on a rainy Friday, and for one terrible, vertiginous second, she was going over. Then the hand. It came from her left, from the direction of the door, fast and certain. Fingers closed around her forearm with a grip that was not gentle. It was the grip of someone who understood that gentleness had no role in this particular moment. The force of it swung her sideways, away from the railing, and she crashed into a chest that was solid and warm and smelled, absurdly, like rain-wet wool and coffee. She grabbed at the lapel of a jacket she could not see. Her fingers clenched. She did not let go. "I have you," the man said. Low voice, steady, "Don't move." She didn't. For 3 seconds there was only the sound of rain and her own breathing and the distant murmur of the city 43 floors below. Then she made herself look up. He was not what she expected, though she could not have said what she expected. He was tall, 6 feet, maybe more, with the kind of build that suggested he had once done something physical for a living. Dark, blonde hair, short at the sides, damp from the rain, a jaw that had not been shaved in 2 or 3 days. Brown eyes that were currently looking at her with an expression that was neither pity nor alarm, but something quieter and more careful than either. He was still holding her arm. "You're okay," he said. It was not a question. She swallowed. "Yes." He turned to look at Adrian Cross. Something happened in the air between them. It was not a threat, it was too quiet for a threat. It was a reassessment. Adrian Cross stared back at the man holding Lily's arm and, for the first time in the 18 months she had known him, said absolutely nothing. The man, she did not know his name, yet stepped back from the railing. keeping himself slightly between Lily and Adrian. He reached down, without looking, and picked up the fallen folders from the wet stone. He handed them to Lily without ceremony, the way you hand someone something that belongs to them. "Let's go inside," he said. She followed him. The two men at the door stepped aside. Ethan Cole, head of security for Harrington Global, walked Lily Harrington through the terrace door and into the building, and neither of them looked back at Adrian Cross standing alone in the rain. The security office on the 14th floor was nothing like the rest of the building. The rest of Harrington Global was polished obsidian and statement lighting and the kind of furniture that photographed well for architecture magazines. The security office was fluorescent lit, monitor dense, and furnished with 3 chairs that had been bought for function rather than optics. It smelled like old coffee and printer toner. Lily found, sitting in it 20 minutes later with a paper cup warming her hands, that she liked it better than anywhere else she had been in this building. "You're Charles Harrington's daughter," Ethan said. He was standing at a workstation, not looking at her, pulling up camera footage from the terrace. "I've worked here 8 months. I've never seen you." "That's correct." He turned then. The expression on his face was the same, careful, measuring one he had worn on the terrace, not unkind, but honest. "Why?" Lily wrapped both hands around the paper cup. The heat was grounding. "My father prefers that I'm not visible at company events, at board meetings, in press materials." She paused. "He would say it's because he's protecting me. The industry can be predatory. Executives' children are targets." She looked at the monitors. "That's what he'd say. And what would you say?" She was quiet for a moment. Outside, rain tapped against the one small window in the room, insistent, rhythmic, the way a question taps against the inside of your skull when you've been refusing to answer it for years. "I'd say he was embarrassed." Her voice was even. "I don't look the way a CEO's daughter is supposed to look. I don't present the way the board expects. I have a social anxiety diagnosis that I've had since I was 19, and that makes press junkets and charity galas and cocktail hours feel like walking through broken glass in bare feet." She set the cup down. "Adrian Cross is everything I'm not. Charming, visible, comfortable in rooms full of people who are watching." She met Ethan's eyes. "So my father put Adrian in front of the cameras and put me behind a screen. It was mutually beneficial." Until Adrian decided beneficial wasn't enough. Ethan said nothing. He turned back to the monitor. After a moment, he pulled up a log system access records, time-stamped and color-coded. "How long has he been taking your work?" 18 months, she said. "The AI architecture for the Meridian platform, the security layering for client data storage, the predictive analytics model that the board approved in April." She paused. "The Q4 report he mentioned. All submitted under his name. All submitted under his name." Ethan was silent for a long moment. On the monitor, she could see herself small and pale, leaning against the wet railing. She looked away. "He mentioned a file," she said, "on the terrace. He didn't say it directly, but I understood." She pushed a piece of hair behind her ear. "He has my medical records, my personal correspondence, some early emails from 3 years ago, before I understood what kind of person he was. That could be." She stopped. Taken out of context. "How did he get them?" "We were engaged," she said. "Briefly. 14 months ago. My father arranged it." She said it without inflection, which was the only way she had found to say it. "I ended it when I realized what he was doing with my work. He had already copied what he needed." Ethan turned to face her fully. "He's been blackmailing you into silence," he said. "For 14 months. He looked at her for a long time, not with pity. With something more useful than pity, with the attention of someone who is filing away information and deciding what to do with it. "Okay," he said. She blinked. "Okay, we're going to fix this." He sat down in the chair across from her. "Walk me through everything." She had never said it out loud before. All of it. She had told fragments to a therapist in Belltown who had listened carefully and suggested journaling. She had told her college friend Rachel in pieces over the phone, late at night, in a voice quiet enough not to be overheard in the Harrington family home where she still lived, because her father had never suggested she leave and she had never had enough of herself left, after working, to build a life somewhere else. She had never sat in a room with the whole of it in front of her and named each piece. It took 40 minutes. When she finished, Ethan had filled 3 pages of a yellow legal pad with notes handwritten because he had explained without apology that he did not trust anything he put into a networked system until he had verified the system's integrity. He had underlined 3 things, circled 2. The Meridian platform, he said. That's the company's main product right now, the one the board is planning to take public in Q2. The architecture is mine, Lily said. The initial framework, the security layer, the entire behavioral prediction model. I have the original files, time-stamped, version-controlled, on a personal drive that has never been connected to a company network. Adrian's name is on the patents. He filed while I was on medical leave. Last January. She had been gone 12 days. Acute anxiety episode. Her father had sent flowers and a card that said "Rest well." I came back to find the filing completed and my name nowhere on it. Ethan tapped his pen against the pad. Did you tell your father? She looked at him. He understood immediately. He nodded once, not with judgment. Just acknowledgement. The blackmail material, he said. Tell me exactly what he has, she told him. The medical records were from a hospitalization she had not disclosed to her father 3 days in 2021, when things had been very bad. The emails were from the early months of the engagement, when she had been trying very hard to be the person Adrian seemed to want her to be, and had written things that, removed from their context, looked like professional misconduct. Shared proprietary data. Discussed board strategy in personal correspondence. He told me, she said, that if I ever said anything about what he'd taken, he would release the medical records to the board and submit the emails as evidence that I was the one mishandling company information. She folded her hands in her lap. My father's #1 priority is the company's image. An executive's daughter with a hospitalization record and an evidence trail suggesting data leakage. She didn't finish the sentence. He would cut you loose, Ethan said. Without a second thought, she said. Not bitterly, just factually. Ethan was quiet. Outside, the rain had intensified. She could hear it properly now. Against the single window, a real rain rather than the earlier drizzle. Then he opened a desk drawer and removed a hard drive in a black case. I have been doing a parallel investigation for 6 weeks, he said, independently. Not on company systems. He set the drive on the table. I took this job 8 months ago. Inside of 3 months, I noticed anomalies in the access logs. Someone with executive credentials was pulling data outside of working hours. Always the same profile. Always the same category of files, architecture documents, development records, the kind of thing that documents authorship. He looked at her. I didn't know what I was looking at yet. Now I do. Lily stared at the drive. You were investigating him, she said. I was investigating the anomaly, he said. I didn't know whose anomaly it was until tonight. He paused. There's more. 3 weeks ago, I found evidence of an external transfer, a significant data package sent to a company called Vantage Solutions. She knew the name. They're a competitor. They've been trying to reverse engineer our predictive analytics for 2 years. They stopped needing to reverse engineer it, Ethan said, approximately 2 months ago. Around the same time, they launched a product that looks remarkably like what you described building. The room was very quiet. He sold it, Lily said. The transfer logs are on that drive, Ethan said, along with 8 weeks of access records. And a secondary file I found it 3 days ago that I think is his archive, the things he's been holding over people. Not just you. She looked up sharply. You're not the only one he's been doing this to, Ethan said. It was not said gently, but there was something careful in it nonetheless. There are at least 2 other employees. a senior developer, a project manager. Both of them have gone quiet in the past year. Both of them had things he could use. She felt something shift in her chest, not pain. Exactly. Recognition. The particular loneliness of believing you are the only one dissolving slightly, which is both a relief and its own kind of grief. "We need to go to the FBI," she said. "I already called them," Ethan said. "3 days ago. I spoke with an agent from the cybercrime division. They want documentation. Tonight is how we get it." They worked until 2 in the morning. Ethan's methodology was systematic in a way that Lily found unexpectedly steadying. He did not rush. He did not perform urgency. He moved through each piece of evidence with the same careful attention, documenting, cross-referencing, building the chain of custody that would make everything admissible and unimpeachable. She sat beside him at the workstation and contributed what she knew. The file naming conventions from her original architecture, the metadata embedded in her time-stamped versions, the specific technical signatures that could prove authorship to anyone who understood the code. He did not pretend to understand the code. He asked her to explain it. She did. At some point around midnight, during a pause while a copy process ran, he got up and came back with 2 vending machine sandwiches and put one in front of her without comment. She ate it. She had not realized she was hungry. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He was looking at the monitor. "Sure. Why are you doing this?" She thought about how to phrase the rest of it. "You found the anomaly 6 weeks ago. You've been building a case independently, on your own time, on your own hardware. You called the FBI 3 days ago. You didn't know who I was when this started." She paused. "You don't owe me anything." He was quiet for a moment. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 7. He did not look away from the monitor. "Her name is Brooke. Her mother left when Brooke was 2. It's been the 2 of us since then." He paused. "I took this job because the benefits are good and the schedule is manageable, and I can drop Brooke at school in the morning and be home before she goes to sleep most nights." He turned to look at Lily. "When I find something wrong, I fix it. That's not complicated. It's just what I do." She looked at him. "There's a specific kind of wrong I can't walk past," he continued. "Someone using their position to take things from people who can't fight back, using what they know about a person, the private things, the hard things as a weapon." He turned back to the screen. "I've seen that up close. I know what it does." A brief pause. "I fix what I can fix." She did not press him on what up close meant. Around 1:30, she found the secondary archive. It was nested inside a folder structure so bureaucratically mundane. Q3, expense compliance, revised, that she nearly scrolled past it. But she recognized something in the file naming that matched a convention she had used in 2020, before Adrian had learned her habits. She flagged it. Ethan pulled it open. The archive was extensive. Medical records, yes, hers and the 2 others Ethan had mentioned. Personal emails. In one case, a series of messages between a developer named Frank Donovan and his sister discussing a lawsuit from 8 years prior that Frank had settled privately and that had nothing to do with Harrington Global and that Adrian had clearly obtained through means that were themselves illegal. "This is more than blackmail," Lily said quietly. "It's extortion. Sustained, organized, over multiple targets." Ethan's voice was level. "The FBI is going to want all of it." He copied everything to 2 separate drives. One for the FBI, one as a backup. He sealed both in evidence bags he had, apparently, kept in the desk on the principle that a security officer should always have evidence bags. He labeled them in neat block letters. At 2 in the morning, he sent a message to the FBI contact. Encrypted. Time-stamped. Then he looked at her. "Monday morning," he said. "I think this needs to happen in the boardroom, in front of the full board. Not in a side office, not in a private meeting that gets managed and contained." He held her gaze. "Your father has been containing this for years. The way to make sure he can't contain it anymore is to make it undeniable in a room full of witnesses." She thought about standing in a room full of board members. 43 faces that had never looked at her, had been actively arranged not to look at her, would now have no choice but to. She thought about Adrian Cross in the rain on the terrace. Monday morning, she said. Saturday. She found her father in his study at 7 in the morning. Charles Harrington was 61, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore his authority the way architecture wore load-bearing walls, invisibly, structurally, as though the whole edifice would collapse without it. He was drinking coffee and reading something on a tablet, and he looked up when she came in with the expression he always wore when she appeared unexpectedly. A brief recalibration, as though he was adjusting for something. Lily. He set down the tablet. You're up early. She sat in the chair across from his desk. She had rehearsed this. She had rehearsed it in the car on the way home last night and in the shower this morning and again in the mirror until her face stopped looking like someone who was about to say something terrible and started looking like someone who had already decided to say it. I need you to know what's been happening, she said. With Adrian. The recalibration again. Adrian is. I know about the IP transfers to Vantage Solutions, she said. I know about the patents he filed during my leave. I know about the external data sales. She kept her voice steady. I know you don't know all of it, but I also know that you know more than you've let yourself know. Her father was silent. 3 years ago, she said, when I told you that I was uncomfortable with how Adrian was presenting my work, you said that Adrian understood the boardroom in ways that I didn't, that he was a necessary face for the company. She held his gaze. I thought you were protecting the company. I thought, she stopped, started again. I thought maybe you were right, that I wasn't equipped. That I was too. Lily, please let me finish. Her voice did not break. She was faintly surprised by this. I thought for a long time that the reason you kept me out of sight was because I was genuinely too much of a liability, that the anxiety diagnosis, the hospitalization, the way I am in rooms full of people, that these things made me a problem you had to manage rather than a person you could trust. She looked at him, and you never told me otherwise. The silence between them had weight. Her father's coffee sat on the desk, untouched. I love you, he said finally. His voice was rough. I want you to know that. I know, she said. I know you do. She had made her peace, over many years and in many therapy sessions, with the particular shape of his love, real and insufficient, and unable to look directly at the things it had failed. But love isn't the thing I need from you right now. She stood. Monday morning, there's going to be a board meeting. The FBI has been notified. Evidence has been compiled. Adrian Cross is going to be held accountable for everything he's done. The theft, the extortion, the corporate espionage. She straightened. I need you to be in that room, and I need you to let it happen. Lily, I'm not asking your permission, she said. I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm telling you because you're my father, and because some part of me still wants you to know before everyone else does. She picked up her bag. That's all. She walked out of the study. In the hallway, out of sight, she stood against the wall for a moment with her eyes closed. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs until they stopped. Then she went home, her own apartment, the one she had quietly rented 8 months ago and told no one about, and she slept for the first time in what felt like years. Monday, 8:15 in the morning. Rain again, real rain this time, hitting the glass in sheets. The Harrington Global Boardroom occupied the entire east face of the 46th floor. It was a room designed to make statements. Long obsidian table, 16 chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Elliott Bay. It was a room that had been carefully arranged to communicate that the people inside it had already won. Adrian Cross arrived at 8:22. He was composed, she would give him that. He sat at the table and opened his laptop with the particular ease of a person who believed, absolutely, that he was the smartest person in any room he entered. He glanced at her when she walked in. His expression did not change. He looked at her the way he always looked at her, as though she were a piece of furniture someone had inexplicably placed in a room designed for people. The board filed in. 14 members. Behind them, her father last, moving slowly, looking older than she had seen him in years. Ethan came in with a younger man she did not know, introduced briefly as Special Agent Daniel Marsh from the FBI's Cybercrime Division. No badge displayed, no announcement. They took seats against the wall. "This is irregular," said board member Harrison Fowler, 65, Harrington Global's longest-serving director, a man whose default expression was controlled skepticism. "Charles, we were told there were operational concerns to review." "This does not look like an operational review." "It is not," Lily said. Every head turned. She was standing at the end of the table. She had dressed carefully not to perform confidence, but to wear it. Navy blazer. No jewelry. Her laptop open in front of her, connected to the room's display system. "My name is Lily Harrington," she said. "I am the architect of the Meridian platform, the primary designer of this company's security architecture, and the author of every AI-driven analytics model Harrington Global has brought to market in the last 2 years. She looked around the table. "None of you know that. You were not supposed to know it. Tonight, you will." The display screen lit up. "What I'm going to show you falls into 3 categories," she said. "First, authorship evidence, technical documentation, time-stamped original files, and version control records proving that the intellectual property currently attributed to Adrian Cross was created by me." She advanced the slide. "Second, theft documentation, access logs, file transfer records, and forensic analysis demonstrating that Adrian Cross accessed, copied, and in one case sold proprietary Harrington Global intellectual property to a direct competitor." She advanced again. "Third, extortion records, files maintained by Adrian Cross containing private information about myself and at least 2 other employees, used to prevent disclosure of the above." The room was very quiet. She looked at Adrian Cross. He was still composed. He was still performing easy. But his hands, she noticed, were flat on the table, and the pressure he was applying to the surface was visible in the whitening of his knuckles. "I'll take questions after," Lily said, "but I'd prefer to present the full picture first. It's important that it be seen as a complete thing." She presented for 40 minutes. He broke at the 40-minute mark. She had almost expected it earlier, at the access logs, maybe, or at the data transfer records to Vantage Solutions. But Adrian Cross had maintained his composure through the technical evidence with the discipline of a man who had decided his best strategy was to look unconcerned. It was only when she displayed the extortion archive, the files he had compiled on her, on Frank Donovan, on the project manager whose name was Sarah Whitfield, that something cracked. "These files were illegally obtained," he said. His voice was controlled but stripped of its usual warmth. "Whatever she's showing you, the chain of custody is documented," Ethan said from the wall. He stood now. "Every piece of evidence in this presentation was obtained and preserved in accordance with federal evidentiary standards. Agent Marsh has reviewed the acquisition process." "This is fabricated," Adrian said, louder. The composure was fracturing now, becoming something faster and less careful. "She put this together because she's been trying to undermine my position here for months. She's unstable." He looked at the board, and the look on his face was the one she recognized from the terrace. The pivot to performance, the recalculation to what the audience wanted. "She has a documented history of—" "Mr. Cross," Special Agent Marsh said. His voice was quiet and absolute. "I'd recommend you stop speaking." The room was very still. "The medical records you retained," Lily said. She did not raise her voice. "You planned to use them to suggest I was unreliable. I'd like to address that directly." She looked around the table. "I was hospitalized in 2021 for 3 days. Acute anxiety episode. I received treatment. I have been in ongoing care since then. I work. I build things. What I built during the period when you believed I was too damaged to pose a threat to you," she indicated the screen, "is this." Nobody spoke. "She's not stable," Adrian said again, but the words had nowhere to land. Harrison Fowler, who had served on the board for 22 years and who had, in Lily's observation, a limited tolerance for men who explained things at length without evidence, looked at Adrian Cross with an expression of measured finality. "Sit down, Adrian," he said. Adrian sat. The FBI agent stood. What followed was orderly in the way that institutional processes are orderly, not dramatic, but absolute. Agent Marsh spoke briefly and with precision. Two additional agents, who had been waiting on the floor below, came up. There was a brief conversation. Adrian Cross stood when asked, and when he left the boardroom, he left with the two agents on either side of him. And he did not look back. The doors closed. The boardroom was very quiet. Her father, who had sat at the far end of the table throughout present, as she had asked, and silent, as he apparently had decided to be, was looking at the surface of the table in front of him. His face was the face of a man who has been watching something build for a long time and has finally stopped pretending it wasn't building. "Lily," Harrison Fowler said. He was looking at her with an attention she was not accustomed to from people in this room. "How long have you been building the Meridian architecture?" 31 months, she said. He nodded slowly. "And the security layer for client data storage?" 22 months. He looked at the other board members. Something passed between them, not words, just the particular quality of silence that precedes a decision being made. "We have a great deal to discuss," Fowler said. He looked at Charles Harrington. "Charles, I think your daughter should stay in the room." She asked for two things. She had practiced this part too, not the words, exactly, but the register. The tone that was not aggressive, but was not asking permission. The tone of someone who knows what they built and is simply naming it. "I want the CTO position," she said. "Not as an interim appointment. Not as a trial period. Full position, announced publicly, with the accompanying authority to restructure the technical division as I see fit." She looked at the board. The technical division has been operating under leadership that did not understand the architecture. There are inefficiencies and redundancies that I can address inside of 6 months. "And the second thing," Fowler said. "A board seat," she said. "I understand that requires a formal vote. I'm asking you to take it." A brief silence. "Those are significant requests," said Diana Kellerman, the board's youngest member, who had been looking at Lily with an expression of focused attention throughout the entire presentation. "They are," Lily agreed. "They reflect significant contributions." She did not apologize for saying it. "The company's primary product line is built on my work. The intellectual property at the center of this proceeding is mine. If the board is prepared to move forward with the public offering that was planned for Q2, it will be doing so on the basis of architecture I created." She held Kellerman's gaze. "I'm not asking for recognition as a favor. I'm asking for it because it is accurate." The vote on the CTO position was immediate and unanimous. The board seat vote was called for the following Thursday. It passed 8-3. Afterward, when the room had partly emptied and the remaining board members were speaking in clusters of 2 and 3, her father approached her. He stood beside her at the window for a moment without speaking. Below, Elliott Bay was gray and restless, the rain moving across the water in long, sweeping curtains. "I should have done this years ago," he said, finally. She considered the many possible responses to this. She chose the honest one. "Yes. I thought I was managing the situation, protecting you from visibility," she said. Not unkindly. "From being seen." "I know, Dad." He was quiet. "I'm not going to pretend it didn't cost me anything," she said. "It did. A lot." She paused. "But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being owed something by you either. That's not a life." She turned to look at him. "I'm going to do this job. I'm going to do it well. And at some point, I'd like to have a conversation, a real one, about what the last 3 years actually were." She held his gaze. "Not today. But at some point." He nodded. His eyes were wet. She let that be what it was. Across the room, by the wall where he had spent the last 2 hours watching everything unfold, Ethan Cole was looking at the bay through the window and giving her the space he always seemed to know she needed. She caught his eye. He lifted his chin slightly, a small acknowledgement. Nothing performed. She looked back at the bay. The rain was still falling. She had stopped minding it. 3 weeks later, the technical division restructuring had begun. She had her own office now, not the glass-walled kind that announced itself from the corridor, but a corner room on the 38th floor with a whiteboard wall and good light and a door that locked from the inside. She had put a cactus on the windowsill. She had no particular sentimental reason for this. She simply liked cactuses. She was working at 7 in the evening, not from compulsion, but because the current problem was interesting and she did not want to stop when she heard a knock. Ethan was in the doorway. Beside him, holding his hand and looking at everything in the room with the comprehensive attention of a child who is cataloging a new place, was a girl of about 7. She had Ethan's coloring dark blonde hair, the same brown eyes, and she was wearing a backpack decorated with small embroidered foxes and carrying a book against her chest with both arms. "Sorry," Ethan said. "After-school pickup went long. I need to finish the overnight security rotation schedule. I can come back." "No," Lily said. "Come in." The girl looked at Lily. Her expression was evaluating in the way children's expressions sometimes are direct, without the social processing that makes adult assessments feel opaque. "Hi," Lily said to her. "Hi," the girl said. "Are you the one who caught the bad man?" "Brooke," Ethan said. "I heard you tell Grandma," Brooke said, unperturbed. "You said there was a bad man doing bad things, and you and the lady caught him." Lily considered this summary. "That's roughly correct," she said. Brooke looked around the room and located the cactus immediately. "Why do you have that?" "I like it," Lily said. "It can't even be a pillow for a cat," Brooke said, with the authority of someone who has considered this. "Cats like to sit on things. That would be bad for a cat." "I don't have a cat," Lily said. "You could get one," Brooke said. "Not right now, probably because you're busy, but maybe later." Ethan pressed his hand over his face briefly. "Brooke, she's right," Lily said. "I probably could get a cat." She moved a chair closer to the wall. "There's a spot here you can sit while your dad works, if you want." Brooke inspected the chair. She decided it was acceptable. She sat in it and opened her book. Lily turned back to her screen. For a while, the only sounds in the room were Ethan on his laptop at the corner table, and Brooke turning pages, and the distant, muffled sound of the city below. "What are you reading?" Lily asked, after a while, without turning around. "It's about a girl who builds robots," Brooke said. "She builds them to do things that need doing, like carry things for people who can't carry them, fix things that are broken." "Is it good?" "Yes," Brooke said. "The girl in it is smart, but no one knows yet because she hasn't shown them." Lily stopped typing. She turned around in her chair. Brooke was looking at her over the top of the book, with the particular expression of a child who has said something and is watching to see if the adult caught it. "That sounds like a good story," Lily said. Brooke nodded. "It is." She paused. "My dad says you build things too, like the platform." "I do. He says it's like building a robot but invisible." A small frown. "I don't totally understand that, but he said when I'm older I will." "He's right," Lily said. "When you're older, I'll explain it to you. If you want." Brooke considered this with serious attention. She went back to her book. Ethan, at the corner table, was looking at his laptop screen and saying nothing, but she could see, in the angle of his jaw, the particular stillness of someone who is trying not to let something show on their face. She turned back to her screen. The problem she had been working on was a real one, a vulnerability in the data handoff between the Meridian platform's predictive layer and its user-facing output that she had found 3 days ago and which, if not addressed before Q2, would create a significant risk. She had been building a patch for 6 hours. It was almost done. She kept working. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Not a message. Not a notification. An actual letter. in an envelope, slid under the door of her office sometime between 7 in the morning and 9. The handwriting on the envelope was precise and unhurried, which told her something. Inside was a single page, no letterhead. Lily, I want you to understand something. What happened in that boardroom was not an ending. It was a transaction. You traded something of value, the life you had, the safety of invisibility for a position. I understand that exchange. I respect it, actually, but positions can be taken. Safety is always more temporary than people like to think. I have a great deal of time ahead of me, and I have not changed my mind about what you cost me. I hope you've enjoyed the last 3 weeks. No signature. She read it once. She set it on her desk. She picked up her phone and called Ethan. I need you to come to my office, she said. Bring an evidence bag. He arrived in 4 minutes. He read the letter, standing at her desk without touching it, bending forward to look at it where it lay. He's out on bail, Ethan said. The trial date is set for March. I know. He straightened and looked at her. Are you scared? She thought about it honestly. There was something in her chest, not fear, exactly, but its cousin. The physical memory of a railing and rain and the city below. The sound of Adrian's voice saying you don't belong here as though it were simply a fact of geography. No, she said. It was true, or close enough. He wants me to be. That's the whole point of the letter. She looked at it. He's trying to reclaim the narrative. He had me in a story where he was the one with power and I was the thing being managed. He needs me to stay in that story. She looked up at Ethan. I'm not in it anymore. Ethan was quiet for a moment. There's protocol for this, he said. I'll document the letter, forward it to Agent Marsh, alert the security team. We'll review his bail conditions. This may constitute a violation. He paused. I'm also going to suggest a review of building access. Your home address. Your Ethan, she said. He stopped. Thank you, she said. Not for the list. For all of it, the 43 floors and the yellow legal pad and the 2 vending machine sandwiches at midnight and the 7-year-old with the foxes on her backpack and every conversation since then in which he had treated her, without apparent effort, as someone worth protecting not because she was fragile, but because she was worth it. For everything. He looked at her for a moment. You're going to be fine, he said. It was not reassurance in the hollow sense, not the you'll be fine people say when they want the conversation to end. It was the you'll be fine of someone who has observed you closely and made an assessment. I know, she said. Outside, the rain was starting again, the first real rain in over a week, throwing itself against the windows of the 38th floor, with the particular Seattle conviction that rain was not weather but a permanent condition of existence. She looked at it. 3 weeks ago, she had stood on the 43rd floor and watched the city through glass from the inside out, feeling like someone pressed against a window of her own life with no way in. Now she was on the other side of that glass. The view was essentially the same. The rain was the same. But the place she was standing was different, and the difference was not small. She turned back to her desk. She had a board meeting in an hour. The Q2 public offering timeline to finalize. A vulnerability patch to present to the technical division. A conversation to schedule. Not today, but soon. With a man who was her father and who was learning, slowly and imperfectly, to look at her directly. She had work to do. She sat down and began. The rain came down outside and she did not look at it again. Not because she was ignoring it, but because she no longer needed to watch the thing coming in. She knew what weather was. She had stood in it. She was still here. The city moved below, gray and patient and full of people who did not know her name yet. That, she thought, was about to change.